Welcome to the first vlog post of Landscapes of Reconquest project. Our aim is to further our understanding of the multi-faith frontier societies of southwestern Europe during the formative period of Middle Ages. Here we introduce our project's main methodological focus, the landscape. Frontiers were temporary spaces that shifted over time with political expansion and contraction following military conquests, land acquisitions or annexations, but they also mapped onto physical topography in various ways. The relationship between the two, and how the environment both shaped and was shaped by the creation of a frontier, is a key theme in our project. Marking the frontier were castles, many of which survive today as spectacular historical monuments. They provide a point of departure for understanding the landscape. Here we can see the castle of Moclin at the northwestern edge of the modern Spanish province of Granada in Andalusia. The current castle and the fortified settlement were built in the mid-13th century on a peak reaching over 1,000 meters above sea level, overlooking the passes through the mountains. There is evidence of an earlier fortification here, probably built in the 11th century, but it was completely transformed, first by the Almohads and then by the Nasrids. To the south lay the heartland territory of the Nasrid Emirate of Granada. The castle was built just after the dynasty established itself in what was left of Al-Andalus, the Islamic polity that had been created some 5 centuries previously across much of Iberia. From the castle we can see the defining topography of the emirate. In the background, the hazy silhouette of the Sierra Nevada, the mountain range that stretches eastwards from the capital Granada. Below a jagged mountain in the foreground is the Sierra Elvira, where the first Andalusi town in the plain of Granada was situated. Moclin itself, and the passes it guards, is visible from the hills of Granada. But when Moclin was built, its surrounding territory was not the frontier. As we pan across, we can see a road snakes up to the northwest, leading to the fortified town of Alcalá la Real on the horizon. In the mid-13th century, the frontier began at this town, and the landscape north of Moclin was under Nasrid rule. Alcalá was captured by Castilian forces in 1341, and became the principal base for launching attacks south against Nasrid territory. At this point, the landscape around Moclin became the frontier. What was it like? Who lived there? Did anything change after it became a frontier? Several towers, fortified outposts, were garrisoned here. Their remains are still visible. Written accounts tell us some were the focus of sieges by Christian forces, which were unsuccessful as long as Nasrid armies were able to relieve them. However, an exhaustive archaeological survey of this region, led by Alberto García Porras, has revealed a notable lack of settlement. On the face of it, the frontier was largely depopulated. But depopulated does not mean empty. People and livestock continue to move across this space. We can see from the animal bones recovered from sites like Moclin that sheep and goats were bred, kept, and herded in this landscape. Today, this landscape is dominated by seemingly endless fields of olive trees. We're at the edge of a province of Jaén, which is the largest producer of olives in the world. Although this industry, for which Spain has become famous, is the product of the last 2 centuries, we suspect that the intensive use of a landscape in this region began once it ceased to be a frontier. Before then, the landscape here was defined more by herding livestock than by farms and cultivated fields, although we can see that the space was clearly managed in both ways. In 1486, Moclin was taken by Castilian forces during the reign of Queen Isabel. 6 years later, Granada would be conquered. During this short time, the frontier was moved south of Moclin. Its acquisition by Christian forces resulted in the foundation of a town and a church at the foot of a castle, which we can still see today. The town was populated by migrants who had to be provisioned, and this depended on resources from the surrounding countryside, as well as more distant trade connections. The farmers were largely Muslims for just over a century before they were expelled and replaced by Christians. These dramatic population changes, the growth of a town, migration, expulsion, would have presented new challenges to managing the landscape. They also mark its transformation from a frontier. We can therefore think of a landscape as having a biography, the cumulative result of human activity, with the frontier as a distinctive chapter in that biography.